hold their nerve, be disciplined, and follow their drill to the letter. When the British came within 40 yards, the legionaries flung a volley of javelins into the front ranks. These light spears were designed to disrupt a charge of cavalry or infantry by killing, wounding, and felling as many of the enemy as possible. And the heavy metal heads lodged in shields and made them useless. Since many of the Britons were lightly armoured or even naked, this organised volley was devastating. Every Roman legionary always carried 2 javelins. The second salvo turned the howling charge into a screaming slaughter. But still the Britons surged forward. Till now they had beaten every army the Romans had sent against them and destroyed their greatest cities. They were determined to win this final battle. 61 AD. Boudicca, Queen of the Iceni, is fighting to end the Roman occupation of Britain. The Britons sent in wave after wave of warriors. Boudicca watched the battle from her chariot. She could see that this was a much better prepared Roman force than the 9th Legion that she had smashed earlier that year.
It's an army that's used to fighting, very experienced, and under a very capable commander.
Her favoured technique of intimidating the enemy was not working against this veteran army. Her army was much larger, but it was being funneled into the narrower end of the battlefield. She could not outflank the Romans.
All of the evidence appears to be that she was an extremely capable woman, a fighter, and she would have been in the battle and probably would have been in the thick of things.
The discipline of the legions stopped the British charge in its tracks. Now Paulinus ordered his counterattack.
Fairly familiar Roman shock tactics. You lead with the javelin, and then as the enemy is approaching you, slowed down almost to a walk, you run straight into them. You hit them very hard.
At the same time, the Roman cavalry ploughed into the disorganised horde, hacking and slashing a path through their crowded ranks.
The Britons would have had much longer swords, and they would have really needed space to use these to effect. They had absolutely fantastic courage, but really they couldn't deploy, they couldn't utilise their courage, they couldn't utilise the fighting tactics for which they were best suited. Everything was on the side of the Romans.
In the press of battle, with no proper leadership to drive them on, many Britons decided to cut and run and live to fight another day. But now their earlier complacency was working against them. Their huge baggage train blocked the way. The Britons had cut off their line of retreat with their own wagons. Now the wives and children of the Britons, so confident of victory, found themselves in the middle of a massacre. Their menfolk ran from battle toward them, only to find that the spaces between the wagons had become choke points. There was no escape. They had abandoned what little battle order they had, and now they were being hacked down.
The Roman legionary fought with the gladius, the short stabbing sword, and stab upwards alongside the shield with the right hand into the stomach area of the enemy.
Bloodlust drove the Romans on. They had come to the battlefield tired and outnumbered. Now they had their enemy cornered.
And having pushed the British warriors back onto their own wagon line, that they just cut down the draft animals, cut down the women and children, spared absolutely nothing.
The Britons were caught between Roman steel and a barricade of their own creation, a crescent of wagons where their families had been watching, hoping to see a British victory. Now they too lay dead at the feet of the Roman troops. It was later claimed that Rome lost only 400 men to 80,000 Britons. The death toll, although no doubt exaggerated in Rome's favour, reflected the terrible carnage inflicted that day.
I think it is likely that it was so. It would be very rash to say that 80,000 is anything like an accurate number, but I think it will have run into thousands. And as for the Roman losses, I think that 400 is probably the number of people who actually perished and fell on the battlefield.
Whatever the figure, Rome had won a devastating and decisive victory. Boudicca raced from the battlefield. Capture would mean being dragged to Rome in chains. Public torture, humiliation, and execution.
There are two stories about the fate of Boudicca. One is that she fell ill and died. The other is that she took poison. The simple answer is we don't know. There is an urban myth that she is buried under platform 9 at King's Cross railway station in London, but there's absolutely no evidence to support that story.
Boudicca's defeat on Watling Street marked the end of effective resistance to Roman rule by the Britons. Most of the island would remain a part of the Roman Empire for the next 400 years without another major revolt.
Rome hit them very, very hard. Boudicca's actual legacy for Roman Britain really was Britain really worth all this? But the answer came back quite quickly thereafter. Yes, it was.
Today, a statue of Boudicca, the warrior queen, stands on the banks of the Thames. The woman who fought against the might of Rome remains an enduring symbol of heroic defiance.
Stay with us after the break to discover how a bovine blunder set a city alight and put the Chicago Fire Department on the hoof in 1871.